Fix one thing first. Your business is running on bits and bytes that were never built to talk to one another. A CRM that's completely disconnected from your invoicing tool. An inbox that spits nothing into anything. A spreadsheet that someone is manually updating 24/7 because of a broken integration from your order system to your fulfillment. Somewhere in the middle of all that, your team is spending hours of its life doing something a functioning system would complete in seconds. This is not a problem that can be solved by AI. It's an integration problem. And the reason most small businesses will never integrate their systems is not because they are too expensive or too complicated. It's because they start with the wrong sequence. This video is not going to tell you that AI will transform your business. It's going to walk you through identifying the one workflow that is costing your business the most money right now, document and then connect that workflow with the correct tool, all while implementing without a developer, without breaking what's working now, and without freaking your team out. So first things first, what's actually in your way? First challenge, system fragmentation. The typical small business, between 10 to 50 employees, will have between 8 to 15 distinct software tools operating. Accounting done in QuickBooks, sales pipeline in HubSpot, customer communication managed in Gmail, projects tracked in Asana or Notion, inventory kept in a spreadsheet, the list goes on. These systems are not built to inherently share data with one another, and none of them are built with the workflow of your specific business in mind. The result is that all the relevant data becomes siloed and manually shuttled from one system to the next, where it becomes manual labor, work that your team does and doesn't ever even think of as a problem. Second challenge, no workflow map. Small business owners clearly understand what their business does. Few understand how it does what it does, step by step, tool by tool, person by person. When there is no map, there's no clear understanding of where your business is truly losing time, and when there is no map, any attempt at automation becomes guesswork. Guesswork automatons crash spectacularly and expensively. Third challenge, lack of team training and resistance. The technically soundest integration imaginable will be a failure if the intended users can't or won't buy into using it because they don't trust it, they don't understand it, or they weren't involved in its implementation. The vast majority of small business AI solutions fail not due to the technology but due to the human factor. People tend to route around tools they don't trust, keeping the manual process alive, just in case, and the automation never fully achieves its potential. Fourth challenge, vendor overclaim and tool sprawl. Every business on the market today is being sold on the idea of an AI-integrated solution. What small business owners do is then sign up for 3 or 4 tools that are all essentially trying to solve the same problems, resulting in paying for licenses they don't need while simultaneously creating another massive layer of complexity to manage. Fifth challenge, no failure point planning. Automations fail, data formats change, API integrations between systems can break unexpectedly from updates. An automation that works flawlessly for 3 months may suddenly be churning out errors that nobody realizes are there for 2 weeks until the damage becomes substantial, all because there's no system in place to monitor for automation breakdown. Here's the reframe: you don't need to integrate your whole business. You need to integrate one bottleneck, one process, one handoff point where time is being wasted, errors are being made, or your team is doing work a system should be handling for them. The successful business integrations do not take the all-at-once approach. They start by identifying the highest cost, highest time, highest error, lowest value task in their department, clearly documenting it and automating it, and then moving to the next. That is the entire strategy, and it begins with a bottleneck audit, which is what the next 5 sections are going to walk you through. Solution 1. Perform a bottleneck audit before even touching a tool. This isn't a technology exercise. This is a time accounting exercise. The point is to find the tasks in your business that have the highest human cost in relation to the value delivered, tasks that a person should ideally be doing an automation for. The bottleneck audit is a three-step process. Step 1 is to ask every employee on your team to log for a week every task they perform that occurs more than once. Don't log the project, log the task, sending an email, copying a record from one system to another, updating a status field, generating a report. Step 2 is to sum the cost of the task. Multiply minutes per task by the frequency and number of people on your team. 400 minutes a week is close to 34 hours a month lost on one single task. Step 3. Rank tasks by cost and repeatability. The highest cost, most repeatable task becomes your number one integration target. Not the flashiest, the one that costs you the most and is most predictable. Predictable tasks are automatable. Unpredictable tasks are not. Solution 2. Map your workflow before automating. Identify your bottleneck, then map out every single step involved before you touch a single tool. It's this step that most implementations skip, and the reason most implementations fail. A workflow map is not a process document. It's a trigger step output diagram. For each step of the workflow you document, what triggers it, what happens as a result, and which system or human receives the output. You can do this in a free tool like Miro or Lucidchart or on a whiteboard photo. Below is an example of a workflow map for lead intake at a service business. A contact form is submitted at your website. That is your trigger. In its current form, that information is funneled to a team member's email inbox. They read it, then manually copy the name, email, and message into the CRM, create a task in the project management tool, and send a templated reply from their own email address. For separate, manual, multi-platform steps by a human for each lead taking 11 minutes each on average. 20 leads a week mean nearly 4 hours every week spent doing entirely manual data transfer, making errors every time someone mistypes an email address or a phone number. With a workflow map, these manual steps are visible for the first time. Once those steps are visible, the architecture of the integration itself becomes obvious. You are not searching for AI yet, but connection points where data needs to travel, between which systems, prompted by which action. Solution 3. Build a tool stack that suits your technical floor. The critical mistake made by most small businesses is trying to find tools that best meet the requirements of their feature list rather than the realities of implementation. The ideal tool for your business is not always the most capable one. It is the one that you will be most likely to implement and maintain. 4 no-code integrators who aren't technical, Zapier, Make, formerly Integromat, and N8N are the 3 main players to consider. Zapier is the easiest to use with the shortest learning curve and has the broadest integration library, thousands of applications that you can integrate that talk to one another for a price point that scales with usage. Make has a stronger visual workflow building tool that can handle more complex multi-step workflows more affordably, and N8N is an open-source, self-hostable solution with the most customizability that works well for small businesses who have at least one technical person who can manage a basic deployment. In terms of an AI layer on top of those automation platforms, currently the tools that make sense for small businesses are Claude for document analysis, response drafting and classification, ChatGPT through the API for content generation workflows, and specialized, vertically integrated tools such as Intercom Fin for support triage and Harvey for legal document review. When building an AI layer, remember that AI sits on top of the integration layer. Establish the connection first, then figure out where in that connection an AI should be used. Implement the minimum viable tool stack necessary to automate the bottleneck. Add more tools only when your existing stack has been demonstrably proven to be insufficient to meet your needs. It's not feasible to have infinite automation tools at your disposal. Doing so will likely prove to be a cost center rather than a capacity. Solution 4. Use human-in-the-loop at the point of decision. The ultimate failure scenario of business automation that many teams are wary of is a silent wrong action. The automation runs in the background, completes the task, and sends out the output to a client or system without any human supervision. This could involve sending an incorrect invoice to a customer or overwriting a record without a backup. These errors can be recovered from and are avoidable with a human-in-the-loop process. Human-in-the-loop is a feature where if any task performed within the workflow has a high-stakes impact, financial, reputational, or legal, on a client or business, the automation pauses and sends it to a human for review prior to being finalized or sent out. It is not a flaw of the automation but a positive feature of responsibly automated tasks. It also fosters team trust as you are providing reassurance that none of the automated tasks is being performed without human oversight. How this typically works is by routing the completed task, draft response, or output from an AI to the team member for a quick review with the click of a mouse or button. This takes about 30 seconds per task. The task being automated on the back end took 11 minutes, so there is still 11 minutes to be gained at the end of the day. Most importantly, no errors are made without supervision, and your team feels comfortable using the new automated system. When implementing automations, utilize the human-in-the-loop concept for all high-stakes actions initially. After the accuracy has been validated for a set duration of time, typically around 30 days, you can then begin to gradually reduce human review checkpoints if the output is at the accuracy rate that your team is willing to accept. Solution 5. Implement a failure point layer before you scale. All automation will eventually break. That's not to be negative, it's to be realistic. APIs get updated. Data structures change. A vendor rolls out an update that takes down a connector. A teammate changes a column in a spreadsheet that a Zap was reading from. The automation fails silently and the manual task it was doing just stops, often for days, before anyone notices. A failure point layer is simply a monitoring and alerting system that you build in parallel to each automation you create. It has 3 parts. 1 is an error notification rule. Get your automation platform to immediately send an alert to one designated person every time a workflow fails to run. Zapier, Make, and N8 and all support this natively. Setup takes less than 5 minutes, and it is the single highest lever action you can take to protect your automation. 2 is a weekly automation audit. Schedule 15 minutes each week to review the run history of all of your active workflows. Look for high error rates, unusual numbers of runs, or unusual drops in numbers, or steps that have increased in processing time. A workflow that ran 500 times last week and 12 times this week is either broken, or the upstream trigger event has changed. You need to catch that in an audit, not in a complaint from a customer. 3rd is a rollback plan. For every automation you put in place that replaces a manual task, document the manual process and have that document accessible. Not because you will necessarily revert to it, but so that if automation fails in a time-sensitive situation, your team knows exactly what needs to be done to achieve that task in absence of the system. That is your insurance and confidence anchor. This is what the numbers look like before and after if you implement these 5 steps in your business with the example of lead intake that we covered earlier. Before integration, 20 leads per week x 11 minutes of manual processing per lead equals 3 hours 40 minutes of team time per week. 8% average error rate on manual data entry. 14-hour average response time for new leads. After integration using a Typeform to HubSpot Zap with a Claude drafted response routed through Slack for one-click approval. 9 seconds of human time per lead, 30 minutes of weekly time for one-click approval versus 3 hours 40. Error rate on data entry of near zero, no manual entry of fields. 4-minute average response time. One workflow. One bottleneck. Fixed in one sprint of roughly 2 to 3 hours to set up and 1 week of human-in-the-loop validation. It is not the technology that changed the business, it is a structured, systematic approach to one particular problem. It is this one distinction that is completely missing from every single AI integration discussion. Before you click off of this video, take one action this week. Ask your team to log every single repeated task they do each day for 5 days, using simple columns for task, time per instance, and times per day. At the end of the week, consolidate all of the information, total the weekly hours that each task is currently taking, and rank the top 3 highest volume tasks. That list is your automation roadmap. You don't need a consultant, you don't need a developer, you don't need another new software subscription to build that list. You need 5 days of honest time tracking and the guts to do something with what you find. In the next video of this series, we are going to take one bottleneck from the list you created and build out the automation in a real business context using no-code tools. We'll map the trigger, we'll select the connector, we'll add the human-in-the-loop step, and configure failure notifications all in a single session. If you found this useful, share it with one other operations manager or business owner that you know is still performing any manual task that they don't have to perform. I'll see you in the next video. Link to the workflow audit template is here. It is free to download and use in the description of this video.